I began to have changes in my life as I was as I enlisted in the United States Air Force. I was being drafted, and I was afraid of being drafted into the Army and being placed into the front lines in Vietnam. I thought if I'd enlist in the Air Force, I could avoid that, and I was 1A. I didn't really want to go to Canada and dodge the draft that way, so I went ahead and enlisted because I was hot on the 1A draft. And I enlisted in the Air Force after being a Fuller Brush salesman for a summer. And at this point, and this is kind of an issue, I don't know how much of an issue it is, but that is where I first got involved with women. I had gone through college never having kissed a girl. And during that summer, I was raped. But I didn't complain, you know. And from there, that became an issue. And it did intertwine in things, and I'll explain that. But as I went on, I went up to my my place of recruitment was West Yellowstone, Montana, where my MGB Roadster wire wheels broke down. Much to my dad's chagrin, I had sold the Chevy Bel Air for the MGA Roadster. And it was a piece of junk, and it finally broke down, and I had nothing left. Though I was accepted at University of Washington, I said bag it and enlisted on a whim in West Yellowstone, Montana. My recruiter picked me up. He was, interestingly, my first gay that I ran into. Later, I was going to find out that I was real attractive to gay people, and I was propositioned a lot by gays. I wished I was by women, but never was. And he propositioned me on my way to the Air Force, which was my first induction into the unusual. Then I went down to basic training in Lackland Air Force Base. The physical thing was no problem. Other guys were passing out. I considered it a challenge. But I began to start to hate the Air Force, as the promises that they gave me didn't come true about sending me on to college right away. As I had high marks in language aptitude, they made me a telephone operator. Things started to go downhill, but they did tell me, your assignment is Homestead Air Force Base right outside of Miami. I thought, well, that's not bad. And I was shipped down to Homestead Air Force Base in the Air Force. I had one thing in mind and one thing only, and that was women. That's all I wanted. And that's all I searched for, diligently. But eventually, that became a hollow scene. I finally met a nice girl, and she dropped me eventually, after I'd dropped her 3 times. And it was then that I became truly suicidal. Nothing to live for. I didn't want to be a hippie. I didn't like the long hairs. I got sick of sex. I got sick of the Air Force and their lies that they were going to send me on to college, which I didn't really want anyway. And at that time, I wasn't into the racial movement. I wasn't into any movement. I was frozen. So I took some deadly poison, put it on my nose, and said, goodbye, cruel world, and nothing happened. Took a fudge sickle and froze my wrists and said, I've had it, and gropingly slashed away with a razor blade. I didn't want the pain, but I wanted out. And it wasn't a deep enough cut. I seriously looked for some reds. At that time, I knew that they were sleeping pills, and I couldn't find any, or I could have been gone today. And finally, on leave, this friend of mine who first turned me on to pot said, hey, you want to try this LSD? A couple of the guys in the barracks had tried it and said, hey, it's wild. But I was still straight as a string and said, no thanks. I took a hit of Osley White Lightning acid. He took me up into the hills outside Denver, Colorado, as I was on leave from the Air Force. And I became an instant hippie. Instantly, because of that acid. I began to look at straight people with their high heels eating white flour hamburgers at a McDonald's hamburgers, over 1 million sold, and saying, no thanks, baby. I fell in love with nature, and I looked at the rocks. I could sit there looking at weeds that were normally an item of horror to my parents, and trip on the intricate structures of ragweed and thistle plant. And I began to become a discerning acid head. I only took it every 3 days, mind you, so that I could clean up properly and all. And then again, I started liking pot more, hash, the whole thing. But the real issue was when I went to San Francisco on leave in 1968 in the summertime. And I'm sorry, it was 1967 in the summer. It was the love that bought me into the hippie movement. True, I liked the acid. I didn't want the straight world all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, I looked at people's hair on their face and thought it was good looking. The raggeder, the better. It started to look good to me. People that had crew cuts look weird now. Their ears stuck out. And different things like that. The drug had an incredible, life-changing force to me. But I was so suicidal, what did I have to lose? And now I was being loved on at least some level. Here I had a military haircut, and these hippies were trusting me, welcoming me in to crash in their little pad in Haight-Ashbury. And I wanted to stay there, but my order said depart to Cape Lisburne, Alaska, 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle. So I took 35 hits of Osley White Lightning, about a gram of hash, and a few joints, and took off for northern Alaska. But the problem was, they found my acid taped underneath the side horse in the gymnasium. I was still holding on to a gymnast goal a little bit, possibly going back to college, painting portraits of the guys' girlfriends for $20 a shot, and taking acid and watching the moonlight sun and the surf come in oranges and purples and greens and other colors on the northern coast of America. And finally decided to give the Air Force my 30-day notice. I had to be honorable. I didn't play gay. I didn't go AWOL. But I said, I am quitting in 30 days. I was out of acid. I was out of hash. And I was out of there. And they, sure enough, after 30 days, shipped me down to a prison, military stockade in Elmendorf Air Force Base. Or wait a minute. Yeah, Elmendorf Air Force Base, I guess it was. In Fairbanks, Alaska, where I did 5 months out of 6. But they didn't take away all my pay. They failed to take my pay in a judiciary mistake. I had a bad conduct discharge, but I flew back down to San Francisco and rented a flat and started my first of 10 hippie communes. There was a level of love in the hippie movement that was really true. There was a camaraderie. It's what I call a filial love. It's not a deeper agape love, the kind of love that says, I'll die for you. But it was a valid love. And there was a family feeling. And you were in this commune, that commune, and then the greater hip movement. And let me tell you, I was a hippy-dippy flower child tripper. And I learned how to play conga drums in Golden Gate Park. And I learned how to climb the trees with strangers and enter into a level of acceptance that I had never had. And I'll never forget at a big be-in where Big Brother and the Holding Company and Janis Joplin were singing, "'Cause you got yours and I got mine," and we were saying, yeah, that world's no good and our world is good. And I would look across at the be-in and see people from the same commune that had come to greet each other warmly, hug one another in a huge hug. And I said, hey man, I've arrived. This is the thing for me. I've got a family now. And I did. I had people that followed me down to the police station as they were busting me and try to get me from being busted. And they in turn were busted with me. And I had a level of love there. I was Big Daddy at the commune. You know, I had rented the apartment and we went ahead and sold drugs and stuff. But there was things that started to cloud the love, and it was the spades. You asked me earlier what my attitude was on spades. This didn't help it, because I learned to say, hey, the spades are cool. Hey, brother, you're cool. But the spades was ripping us off. They were taking our drugs. at gunpoint in some cases. The Spades came in later on, what we call the Spades, and they interrupted the flower child scene. And I didn't care about money. I wanted to trip. I wanted to love. I still wanted women. And I wanted an old lady by this time, not just any woman. I wanted an old lady. And I still wasn't that heavily into the cause, but my favorite song was, Come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Yeah, let's all love one another. I like this kind of hippie songs. People get ready, there's a train a-coming, picking up passengers from coast to coast. But then, too, I identified as a hippie. I was a hippie. I wasn't ashamed of it. I was a flower child. And if you're going to San Francisco, wear a flower in your hair. I dug it. We put our thumb out heading one direction on the freeway, but there were some people across the street heading down to L.A. We were on our way to Vancouver, and they said, hey, come with us. We said, why not? And we go across the street and head down that way. You know, it was okay. If you had long hair, you were my friend. And I was prejudiced on straights. They were the enemy. They were going to try to arrest us and stop our free love scene. We didn't want to hurt anyone. We just wanted to dance and sing, take our acid, and have a good time.